Okay, let us talk about the meristematic tissue. As I said in the previous video, the meristematic tissue is the tissue which continuously divides. Okay, and it was first proposed by a scientist called Carl Nageli, and it is a Greek. It comes from the Greek word merizein, which means to divide. You know, when you look at animal tissues, they don't have that ability to divide constantly. But because of the meristematic tissue, you have the ability to perform tissue culture experiments. What is tissue culture? Tissue culture is the scientific process of producing new plants from one. If you take only one piece of a plant, you can produce a new plant. Okay, because of the presence of this actively dividing tissue. So these actively dividing tissue can produce an undifferentiated mass of cells which are always dividing. And where are they found? Always in the growing regions of the plant, and they will give rise to different plant organs and help in the growth of the plant. So meristematic tissues are growth tissues that help the plant to grow. So these are the characteristics of meristematic cells. They are composed of rapidly dividing cells that are undifferentiated, which means that they do not have a particular place to go yet or a particular function yet. Their size and the shape may change, but the cells are more or less isodiametric, meaning more or less squarish in shape. They contain dense granular cytoplasm, which means that their cytoplasm is, if you see in the picture, you can see it is a thicker type of cytoplasm. You do not see any space generally. Can you see in the cell also? There is no vacuole. Okay, the cell wall is always a primary cell wall, which is meaning that it's not very thick. And we are going to talk about this pit fields in another video. Okay, so we are going to study up till here. That is the knowledge of your meristematic cells. We are going to study about the classification of meristems, but not too much in detail. Okay, first of all, the position of the plant based on the position of the plant, there are three different meristems. You have the apical, you have the lateral, and you have the intercalary meristem. What is the I'm not going to go into detail, but I will show you what is the apical, what is the lateral, what is the intercalary meristem. In this picture, ignore these notes for just a moment. I just want you to concentrate on this picture. Do you see this blue region at the tip? This is called as the apical meristem. Why? Because the apical meristem is found only at the tips of the plant. For example, the shoot. And in this diagram, it is not showing, girls, but at the root tips also, you find the apical meristem. But it is called as the root apical meristem. Okay, so apical means tip. Always remember, apical meristem are found at the tips of the plant. What about intercalary meristem? Can you see in this picture? You have the meristematic region here. This intercalary meristem is responsible for giving rise to nodes and internodes. Okay, can you see at the internodes you have the leaves? Okay, so intercalary meristem will give rise to the internodes. And then you have another type of meristem which is going to help you to grow diam according to the width of the plant. For example, now, how do you suppose a plant can grow into a tree? If you don't have this lateral meristem, a very thin plant, a thin stem, cannot grow into a thick trunk without the help of this lateral meristem. The lateral meristem helps to grow outwards according to the diameter of the plant, according to the girth of the plant. You have the lateral meristem. Okay, so in detail, you have the shoot and the root apical meristem. Okay, the shoot apical meristem is found at the tips. Okay, and the first cell at the tip is known as the apical cell or the apical initial. Okay, so the root tip also has the apical meristem. So where does the apical meristem lie? It lies at the tips of the stem, at the tips of the roots, but also sometimes at the tips of leaves. It is composed of one or more cells. It is present in the growing tips. It is also called as apical cell or apical initial. The cells maintains their individuality and position. The activity of this meristem causes increase in length. Very important. What is the purpose of the apical meristem? It helps to grow, increase the height or length of the plant. Okay, and in this is important also because it's given in blue color that the apical meristem is terminal in, excuse me girls, it is terminal in stem. Can you see in this picture? I don't know if you can see here in this picture. The red dot shows that the apical meristem is found right at the tip or the terminal point. But in this picture for the root, this is the picture of the root. Okay, the apical meristem is in this red region here, which is subterminal, which means not here. This portion is the terminal end, but the shoot, or sorry, the root apical meristem is found subterminally. Okay, so that is very important for you to know. Whereas the okay, so the number of apical cells can change in plants that are lower plants, for example, like algae, sorry, not algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes. You have only one single apical cell. I think you have studied when you studied about the development of archegonia or antheridia. You notice that the apical cell is only one. But in gymnosperm and angiosperms, what are these? Gymnosperm is actually the tree family. Angiosperms are actually the family of flowers. So these plant trees and flowers, the apical meristem will have more cells. Okay, and like I said, the lateral meristem you will study in another topic. The lateral meristem is the tissue which is responsible for growing the size of the plant, especially the stem. From a very thin stem, you can get a very thick trunk. Okay, so it helps to increase the diameter of the plant body. It helps to increase by adding new cells. Okay, and how do they divide? They divide only in one plane. And you have two different lateral meristems. You have the vascular cambium and the cork cambium. These you are going to study in another chapter in detail, but keep in mind that these are two different lateral meristematic tissues. Okay. The intercalary meristem is between the permanent tissues. These intercalary meristem, they are found in the internodes. Okay, so these are not so much. This intercalary meristem you will not be studying, so I won't study or stress on this meristem. Okay, so we are going to study about the primary meristem in detail. Okay, what is the primary meristem? Based upon the nature of the cells, you have a primary meristem and a secondary meristem. Okay, what are primary meristem? Primary meristem are cells that directly develop from the embryonic cells. Embryonic cells are cells that are found inside the seed. When the seed is growing, you have the embryo inside the seeds. So when the seed, I cannot draw here, but you have the seed, right? And inside the seed, you have the, here, let me draw it in a better way. Inside the seed, you have the embryo. Okay, when the seed germinates, part of the embryo grows downwards, part of the embryo grows upwards. This the 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 region that grows upwards is called as the plumule. Okay, and the region that grows downwards is called as the radicle. Okay, the plumule will give rise to the stem or the shoots. Okay, and the radicle will give rise to the roots. Okay, so we can say, where do the primary meristem occur? They occur only in directly from the embryo. They give rise to the apical meristems like the shoot apical meristem and the root apical meristem. What about secondary meristem? Okay, secondary meristem, if you plant a tree seed, the seed of a tree, right? First of all, it will give rise to a very thin looking plant which has a very thin stem, right? So once this plant grows, what will you notice? These tissues found in this plant are primary tissues. Why? Because they develop directly from the growing seed. But later on, when this plant slowly grows upwards, it will start to grow sidewards, or it will grow to increase its diameter. So slowly it will add more tissues to the stem to become a very thick trunk like this. Okay, so in that way, these tissues, because they do not develop directly from the embryo, but they develop after the plant has grown from the permanent tissues, these tissues now are called as the secondary tissues. Why? Because they are not developed from the seed directly, but after the seed has grown and after the plant has grown properly into the shoots and the roots has developed, then slowly a second type of tissue will develop, which is called as the secondary tissue, and this tissue will add more size to the stem, add more tissues to the stem to make it bigger, or to increase the girth or the diameter of the stem. Okay, so that is the meaning of secondary meristem. Thank you, girls. We are going to study now in better detail in the next video about the theories of the apical meristem.